In this video, I will be giving an in-depth analysis of each international team in the 2023 Little League World Series. Stay tuned to the end of the video, where I will give my official international bracket power rankings. I will link a playlist in the description with the highlights of each international regional championship game. Asia Pacific will be represented by Kaishan Little League from Taoyuan, Chinese Taipei. Chinese Taipei might have the best player in the tournament. Their ace, Chenjun Fan, has a fastball that gets up to 77 miles per hour. That is equivalent to a fastball over 100 miles per hour. If Chinese Taipei is pitching their ace, they are difficult to beat. Although, in their regional final, they lost to South Korea with their ace on the mound. South Korea will not advance to Williamsport because they had multiple ineligible players. Per Little League, 2 players participated in the South Korean national tournament for South Seoul Little League and were then added to the roster of and participated for South Seoul Little League in the Asia Pacific region tournament after their team was eliminated from the South Korean national tournament. Overall, South Korea was the most impressive team I saw on the international side, and since Chinese Taipei played them close, I believe that Chinese Taipei will find success in Williamsport. Australia will be represented by Hills Little League from Sydney, New South Wales. Hills will advance to Williamsport for the first time since 2017, when they found some success in the Little League World Series. However, I don't expect this year's team to have success in Williamsport. This team makes some errors, doesn't have very impressive pitching, and is mediocre offensively. Zach Martin is their only returner from last year's team that made the Australian final, and has been their leadoff hitter for the past 2 years. They did play their regional tournament in June, so with a bit more practice this team could get good enough to steal a game or two. Overall, I don't have many expectations for Australia in the Little League World Series this year. Cuba will be represented by Bayamo Little League from Bayamo. This year is the first year ever that Cuba will be in the Little League World Series. Cuba went 8-2 in their regional tournament, looking dominant at times in their tournament. In the winner-take-all championship, the game was pretty even until they broke the game open in extra innings. Edgar Torres was the MVP of the final, getting the win in relief and hitting the triple in extra innings to give Cuba extra runs. Cuba is a pretty solid hitting team with decent pitching. I believe Cuba will be a middle-of-the-pack team in the tournament. Cuba could have improved since they last played, as their regional tournament was played back in February. The Caribbean will be represented by Pabeo Little League from Willemstad, Curacao. Curacao won the international championship the past 2 years and is a strong candidate to make it a three-peat. They have lights-out pitching and great hitting. They have 5 pitchers that throw at least high 60s in terms of velocity. JWL is one of their stars. A very good pitcher who hit 3 home runs in 4 games in regionals. He is probably the best player on the team. They also have 5 or 6 returners from last year's squad that made the Little League World Series final. Dominant is an understatement for this team's performance at the regional tournament. Curacao will undoubtedly be the favorite to represent the international side in the 2023 Little League World Series championship game. Europe-Africa will be represented by South Czech Republic Little League from Brno, Czech Republic. Czech Republic dominated their regional tournament, albeit against poor competition. This team was losing in the last innings of the regional final against the Netherlands, but pulled through in the bottom of the 6th to win on a walk-off single. They are a fundamentally sound team that can hit. Europe-Africa does not have the top-end talent that the other teams have in this tournament. I would be surprised if this team wins more than 1 game in the Little League World Series this year. Japan will be represented by Musashi Fuchu Little League from Tokyo. This team lost in the Tokyo tournament to Chofu Little League, but went undefeated in the Japan regional tournament, going 4-0. This team looked dominant at times. They have a few upper 60s pitchers that know how to pitch, and typical of Japanese teams, are exceptional on defense. Their offense was on fire in the regional tournament. Although Japan has not had much success in the Little League World Series in the recent past, I expect this team to win games in Williamsport. Panama will be represented by Club Activo 2030 Little League from Veracruz. Panama was a very competitive tournament this year, as a lot of the games were extremely close. In a best-of-3 championship series, Veracruz held on to win the decisive Game 3. This team is solid and plays with a lot of heart. They have fundamentally sound defense and pitchers who pound the zone. I see them as a middle-of-the-pack team in the tournament. They know how to win close games, but don't have the dominance or intimidation factor that the other teams have. Latin America will be represented by San Francisco Little League from Maracaibo, Venezuela. Latin America impressed me in the regional tournament. They looked virtually impossible to score against, and had a few players that were exceptional hitters. If this team hits in Williamsport, they could win the international championship. Their pitching staff and defense might be the best on the international side. They gave up 4 runs in 6 games in regionals. Mexico will be represented by Municipal de Tijuana Little League from Tijuana. This team lost their first game of regionals, but went on a run and won their next 7 games. Mexico looked very good in the regional championship. Against a very good ace, they battled, and eventually blew the game open on a grand slam. This team is very good at hitting, and has some good pitching depth. In the final, they started a lefty that had above-average velocity that shut out Villa del Refugio. Canada will be represented by North Regina Little League from Regina, Saskatchewan. This team was the host league for Canada tournament and beat the heavily favored British Columbia team to win the region. British Columbia was 23-0 on the summer and outscored opponents 270-14 before the loss, making North Regina's win one of the biggest upsets ever. North Regina has a very dominant lefty ace who shut out British Columbia in pool play. They are a very solid defensive team too. Although, outside of their ace, their pitching is shaky and their hitting isn't as good as the other teams in the tournament. If Canada saves their ace for their second game and doesn't waste their ace against a very good Chinese Taipei team, Canada can win a game or 2 in this year's Little League World Series. Now, for the power rankings, I will go from last to first. At 10th is Australia. At 9th is Europe-Africa. At 8th is Cuba. At 7th is Canada. At 6th in Panama. At 5th is Latin America. At 4th is Chinese Taipei. At 3rd is Japan. At 2nd is Mexico. And at number 1 is Caribbean, who is my pick to represent the international side in the Little League World Series Championship. Realistically, I could see any of the top 5 winning the international championship. Thanks for watching.